2 years in the shit, Dar. What did you expect?
You can't keep snakes in your backyard and expect them only to bite your neighbors.
You know, there are things that Pakistanis have done as complicated.
Homeland is back. Season 5, Episode 1. It's called Separation Anxiety. And I'll tell you, I've had some separation anxiety from this show. For me, I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but for me, it's up there on the level with like a Mad Men, Breaking Bad, definitely third string, below those two. But for me, it's up there. The first 2 seasons were killer. We all agree Season 3 wasn't great. Season 4 started out very poorly, but ramped up to be some of the best TV I've seen. The end of Season 4, where Saul is a prisoner of Haqqani, and they've got to get him back. The character development, the emotional beats, even the plot, just everything clicked for me, and it was just great. So I have been waiting for Season 5 with bated breath. No exaggeration or hyperbole intended. So it's been 2 years, and we open with a German hacktivist who in his spare time runs some kind of like a porno video sort of ring with cams everywhere. And he is messing with a terrorist recruiting site. That is a dangerous business. I draw the line a million miles before that. He posts a very unflattering video of one of their leaders on the site, and the CIA, the Berlin station, picks it up, tries to figure out who he is, and unfortunately he out-hacks them, and actually retrieves the exact number, 1,361 files, I think it is. I can't find, yes, 1,361 classified files. We later learn, when Saul Berenson, demands to know how this could have happened, that when they moved their secure servers to the basement or whatever, someone left some cabling or some wiring behind. That guy is fired. So, some of the documents are sent to the During Foundation, where Carrie, we find, is working as the head of security. And this is a foundation that does a lot of philanthropy work, a lot of volunteer work, also seems to run a few publications, because there's an American journalist there who is very excited to publish these classified documents to the interwebs. Damn the repercussions to people's safety or to national security. She doesn't care. The document in question that everyone is all upset about details the agreement between the Americans and the Germans to basically have the CIA do the spying on the German people for the German government, because they can't do it themselves, so they've subcontracted out the CIA to do their spying for them, which is clearly not going to go over well. And this whole thing sort of brings up, it's like a Snowden situation, which I think they're going to touch on that more as the series goes on, but it really brings up that question of safety versus security. At what point are you willing to give up enough of your privacy to ensure a little more safety at home? I know some of the founding fathers would say never. You don't give up an ounce of liberty for a pound of freedom. But there's people in this world who agree. I mean, I certainly don't want to get caught up in some kind of a terrorist attack. I don't know, nobody does. But at what point are you going to give up enough of your freedom to ensure that doesn't happen? It's a tough question, and it looks like this season 5, is going to tackle that question. And it's not a quick one. There's no quick answer to this one. So before we go too far, where did we leave off? One of the last things we saw was Dar Dal has formed an alliance with Haqqani, and basically they agreed to take him off the kill list if he agrees to no longer harbor terrorists in Afghanistan, and they shook hands on it, and that's why Carrie saw Dar in the back of that SUV with Haqqani. Saul gives tacit approval and a chance to getting back his directorship at the CIA. At some point in the intervening 2 years, Carrie tanks his bid for director, and he ends up as I have it here, Saul's the European Division Chief. So Dar Dal gives Saul back the only copy of the video showing him in captivity, and he's not going to pass that up. So he actually goes back to work with Dar Dal, which Carrie looks as sort of going back to work with the enemy because of all the people that Haqqani killed. She looks at it as an affront to their name and to their memory, and you can't move forward. It's making a deal with the devil. But Saul wants his old job back, so he sees the greater good. He sees the greater good in the decision. So 2 years later, they see each other again, and it's a pretty tense meeting in the hallway. Carrie's trying to use her former position with the CIA to get in good with the CIA Berlin station chief, who's actually played by Miranda Otto, who we know who played Lady Eowyn in Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I know this actress from somewhere, and that's where I know her from. So There's a lot of unresolved feelings there. He blames her for losing the directorship at the CIA, and she's blaming him for working with the enemy. And she says, I just want to do good work. And Saul basically says, well, you're not. You're not doing good work. You're working for these people who are World War II war criminals. And they throw money around now, but look at how they got it, basically. So we've talked about Carrie and Saul. Let's talk about Carrie and Quinn. After they sort of professed their mutual feelings for each other, Carrie got cold feet, and it absolutely turned Quinn into a cold-hearted killer. He goes to Syria doing black ops, assassinations for 2 years. 2 years in the shit, as Saul says. And what do you expect him to say? He's addressing this committee of politicians, and they're asking him, what do you want to do with Raqqa? And he basically says, hit the reset button, turn it into a parking lot. Because there's nothing they can do. They want to talk strategy with him. And he says, what's our strategy? And I'll tell you if we're hitting it. He says, the enemy's strategy hasn't changed since the 7th century. It's to die for the caliphate and get rid of all the infidels. What's our strategy? What can we possibly do? What can a handful of black ops operatives do against that? And they don't have any answers. But Saul thinks it was good, even though he went off script, to give them a taste of reality and let these politicians, these pencil pushers, if you will, give them an inside look at what's really happening on the ground in Syria. So the main story of the episode is Carrie's work with the During Foundation, and he wants to go to the Syrian border in Lebanon to this refugee camp that's controlled by Hezbollah. And he wants to bring aid and food and medicine there, and he knows that by his presence there, he can get a number of other generous benefactors to also write checks to help them out. So he knows that if he goes, makes an appearance, puts himself on the line, and really shows them firsthand what's going on there, he can secure the money to really make a difference there. But you can't just go to Syria. One does not simply walk across the Lebanese-Syrian border. They need protection. And Carrie, with her history with the CIA, knows. She first, as we said before, goes to the Berlin station chief and asks for help. She's no help, basically. She wants information from Carrie about what During is doing, but she's not going to give anything up. So they basically part ways, not helping either one of them, helping the other. She goes to a local imam and says, I need to get in touch with the Hezbollah commander. I know he's underground here in Berlin. And he says, I don't know anything about it. And later she's walking down the street, a bag's thrown over her head. She's thrown in the back of the van, and she's brought to this underground facility where she comes face to face with the commander, who basically says, when you were the drone queen, you killed my son, you killed my family, I will fight you forever. And she says, you're obligated to take my request to the council. Ask them, will they give Mr. During free passage? Will they invite him as their guest to the camp so he can help the people? And he basically says he doesn't want the help, that suffering is their power, and that the U.S. government provides them with unlimited suffering. But he is obligated to take the question to the council, and the show ends with Carrie getting woken up in the middle of the night by the phone call that says, we hereby invite you to be our guest, to be the guest of the council in Syria. So next week we're obviously going to Syria, and from what I've read online, there's going to be much more action. This episode was a lot of setup, and it's definitely going to pay off in the coming weeks. A couple notes. No more theme song. It's fine with me. I thought this theme song was a little bit of a distraction. It was something I usually skipped past. It worked well for the first few seasons, but it's unnecessary now. Allison Carr is the name of the CIA station chief, and I think her character will be fleshed out more. The show is mostly taking place in Berlin, so I'm glad they got Miranda Otto to play her. The deal between Dar and Saul was for Saul to be director, but how did Carrie tank that? How did he end up as the European division chief? I'd like a little more background on that. Was it just guilt by association? Or did she actually pull some stunt? Probably just guilt by association. Carrie's in the church. She's going to Mass. She's taking the host. She's trying to atone for her past sins, and you can't expect someone called the Drone Queen to be able to leave her past behind so quickly. Her building a relatively normal life, something that she denied Quinn, is tenuous at best here. Less of Carrie's family. It's definitely a dry well from a narrative perspective. Her father's gone. We don't need to see her mother again. That was a one-note story. It worked well for what it was. I'm glad she stepped up and is becoming a mother to a little girl. This is, of course, Brody's daughter. She's very adorable, and I'm glad that Carrie has at least stepped up and is being a mother to her. Is there something going on between Carrie and During? I noticed that the Hezbollah people drop her off at During's house, and the American reporter, who we haven't touched on too much, was very, She seemed incensed. She says, "Is Carrie there now?" And I wonder if there's something going on there. It seems like she has a stable relationship with her boyfriend in Berlin, but could there be something else going on between her and During? So next week's episode is called The Tradition of Hospitality. Of course, we know the Hezbollah commander has invited them to Syria as their guests, so we're going to learn about the tradition of hospitality. I hope they take it a little bit more seriously than Walder Frey, otherwise we might have another red wedding on our hands. So we'll see you next week for The Tradition of Hospitality, and as always, please remember to hit subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.